Welcome to Coding with BC Brian. We're going to go over the basics of functions today. Functions in most languages aren't a variable, but in JavaScript we can declare functions as a variable and they behave like variables. So we're going to call this my function, and it's equal to a function, and this is the syntax for a function. So we declare that it's equal to a function. In here are parameters that we can send in. And in here, this is a comment out, so this line won't be read as code. That's what the double slash does, is comment outline, so we can comment about our code. Do things with the parameters. So there we go. We got my function, and then inside here we do things with the parameters. So what we're going to do is just use the cool tool we've had before, console.log. And as we discussed before, we can pass in multiple things. So I'm going to say P1 for parameter 1. Help if that was inside the quotes. And then here, say P2 for parameter 2. And then we're going to open up the console log. And we can see that there's nothing. And run it. And there's still nothing popping up. And that's because we haven't called it. So to call it, we just write my function and put 2 parentheses. And now when we run it, it says my function is not defined, because I did a lowercase f instead of a capitalized F. Now let's run it. There we go. P1 undefined, P2 undefined. It's because I didn't pass in these parameters. So to pass in parameters in the parentheses, we just do stuff and say hello. There's one parameter, and goodbye. There's another parameter. Now we get P1 is hello and P2 is goodbye. There are other ways to define functions. For example, I can do function, then I can do the name of the function, my other function, but then it's the same, the parentheses, and then for convenience sake, we're just going to copy these internals. And we'll pass in the same stuff into this function, my other function, and now when we clear this and run it, it says uncaught reference error. My other function is not defined. Me other function. There we go. I speak JavaScript better than I speak English. So there we go. So we have them happening twice now. Just to distinguish, let's do hello to and goodbye to, and P1.1 and P2.2. Well, let's make this a 2 because it's like the second. Alright. So now when we run it, we can see that we're getting the different sections of them. So I would recommend always writing functions in this syntax so that you remember they're a variable. The reason I say that is because if I go like this later on in the code, so lots of lines of code happen, and then I forget that I've called this. So let's move this up here. And then I say let's say var my function equals 3. So now I've set my function equal to 3, and then if I try and run it how I'm expecting to, up above, and I've lost context because I forgot how I used it, then when I clear this and run it, my function is not a function. So that's right here, that all of a sudden now my function is no longer a function. We never made it to the second call. So that's why I like to always declare them as functions, so that I remember that, so I don't make mistakes like this. Another thing I try to do is functions. I always try to start with a verb. So like print strings, or get is a common one, like get this value or compute this value, just so that I know that that verbiage is telling me that it's doing something. So yeah, that's that little bit of functions. So one other thing to note about functions is they also return values. So I can do, instead of a console log, we can do return, and I'm going to concat this string by adding them all together. And we'll put a space there and a space there. And so now we're calling print strings here. But I'm going to say that it's equal to print strings. Okay? And then what we'll do is console.log return value. And var return value, just to see as we pass in other stuff, test, and pass in number 5. Let's clear this, and as we run it, unexpected token. So somewhere I have an extra parenthesis right there. Let's try that again. My function is not defined. This is true. There we go. So now this is a string all by itself that it's printing out, because I've told that my function that prints strings, it's really not correct. It should be, does it do, no, okay. Concat. It's not really printing the strings anymore, it's concating them. So now if I clear this just so we can see it again and run it, I see that it's printing out this whole string, which is great. We can do other things. We can have crazy math computations happening and returning a number. Good luck coding.